Donato's is legendary for putting so much on their pizzas, but just listen to what they're taking off. Right now, buy any large pizza and add a large one-topping pizza for half off. Use promo code HALF. Donato's, gotta love more.
The Sports Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon Petit says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Thursday, April 16th, 2026, and it's my official duty to welcome you into episode 552 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome here to the second podcast of the week. We're closing in on the weekend, and as I mentioned in the podcast earlier this week, there'd be something by the end of the week. I'm sure there'd be something for us to talk about, and the Ohio State roster and transfer class remains essentially what it was when we last spoke. Ohio State has not yet landed anybody new in the portal. The Buckeyes have missed out on a couple of guys that they've been linked with, and will enter the weekend still looking to try to fill out the roster and fill out the portal class. And we'll talk more about that here in a moment. Ohio State's sitting on 2 commitments at this point, and getting ready for the spring game this weekend. We'll see who is there, what visitors are there. I'll have a lot of coverage coming out of that, certainly. But we're going to have a guest here on this episode. So as we kind of wait to get a feel for what this full roster looks like and kind of get our full arms around what the 2026-27 Buckeyes will be, we're still getting it to know these new additions, whether it's Andrea Jelovich or Justin Pippen, 2 players that have been brought in that clearly will be front of the rotation type of players. And so in the spirit of that, I'm trying to start getting some background here and start getting like a knowledge base to try to understand who these guys are and what they may or may not be able to provide for Ohio State and how we think they might fit into what the team will look like next year. And so I got a special guest on this episode of the podcast. We're going to have Jeff Faraudo on in a minute. Jeff Faraudo. I apologize. I said his name wrong. You'll hear it in the interview here shortly. So Jeff, I'm sorry. I'm just bad with this kind of stuff, which is why I write. But he is a California men's basketball writer, covers the team, and had some perspective on Justin Pippen, and had a really good conversation with him. And I feel like I learned a little bit. I think you're going to learn a little bit, and I think we'll all come out of this with a better feel for how Pippen fits into the Ohio State roster and what that is going to look like next season. So we'll get to that here in just a moment. I do think we should sort of set where things are right now, again, as we go into Thursday. So Ohio State hosting Jimmy Williams on a visit. Duquesne transfer, certainly a guy that they are looking at, certainly someone that there's a lot of interest in. Ultimately, how this plays out, we'll probably know, I would guess, in the next day or two, because things do tend to move pretty quickly, and we're not really seeing a lot of guys this time around take a lot of portal visits. So we'll stay tuned on that one. But we're looking at Ohio State roster right now that consists of John Mobley, Amari Bynum, Anthony Thompson, Josh Ojamwana, Ivan Ugovin, Jelovich, who goes by Jelly, Alex Smith, Justin Pippen. And that's where we are from the standpoint of like paid NIL scholarship players. So that's 8. So Ohio State from this point forward, I expect them to be adding 2 more guards. And I do think that the top of the rotation is fairly set, or at least who are the top five, who would I think Ohio State's going to bring in? Well, let me back this up. Ohio State's starting lineup would appear to be Justin Pippen, John Mobley, Anthony Thompson, Amari Bynum, and then maybe Yelovich, maybe Ojonwuna. But that's essentially there's the starting lineup. And at this point, I don't necessarily foresee them adding anybody that would be taking one of those starting spots away. Certainly, Ohio State needs to have more bench production and capable players coming off the bench. And that's where I expect these final additions in the portal to go. I expect these to be guards who will provide depth, guards who can maybe add a little bit of a different dynamic than guys that are already on the roster, and guys who can be maybe more solid overall contributors consistently than what Ohio State got last year in its backcourt with Gabe Cupps and Tayson Chapman. So, like I said, I would Jimmy Williams. That's a name I feel we should probably keep an eye on. I'd also probably keep an eye on Abdi Bashir from Kansas State, Mari Evans from Tennessee. I don't know why I said Tennessee, weird. And perhaps my personal favorite, Xavier Robinson, who goes by Stink from Butler. Ohio State recruited him out of high school. He is in the portal. I think that's the best nickname I've heard in a good while. But those are some guys that appear to be in the mix. My best guess here on a Thursday night is that perhaps the final two pieces to the roster come from that list of players. Ultimately, we'll see how this shakes out. But it's not been a week where Ohio State has maybe made headlines that I think certainly some of you that I've heard from online have been expecting. Like, they didn't get Jalen Harrelson from Notre Dame. There's, I think, a general consensus, it feels, at least in the social media portion of the fan base, that they're wanting Ohio State to have gotten more impact players, more high-level, high-major, proven guys. And, we'll have conversations about what this roster looks like when we do see the full picture of it. But at this point, I do feel like it seems likely that Ohio State's top five are pretty solidified, and now you're looking for who's the sixth man, who's the next guy off the bench, and then we'll have to assess it from there. But that's where it seems to stand right now as we get ready to head into Friday and head into the weekend and the spring game and see what transpires there. So we're going to move on here in just a second and welcome our guest on the podcast. First, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our crack web team can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review, please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks to all of you who've taken the time to do all those things. Donato's is legendary for putting so many toppings on their pizzas, but just wait till you hear what they're taking off. For a very limited time, when you buy any large Donato's pizza, you can add a large one-topping pizza for 50% off. That's right, half off. You order using promo code HALF. Order your favorite large Donato's pizza and add a large one-topping pizza for half off today. Donato's, gotta love more. And now, let's get to our interview. All right, so I'm excited to bring a guest onto this episode of the BuckeyeXtra podcast. His name is Jeff Faraudo, and he's co-publisher of Cal Bears on SI. And I'm thrilled to have him on here to tell us a little bit more about Justin Pippen. So, Jeff, how's your day going out there?
It's going just great. Adam, thanks very much. It is Faraudo, not Faraudo, but you're not the first to do that, so don't worry about it. But happy to be here with you.
Well, I apologize for that. It's funny. I read something the other day, and it said anytime that you should never make fun of someone who mispronounces a word because it means they read it in a book. And I thought, okay, I'm going to use that as my excuse going forward every time I mispronounce something.
Fair enough.
So, well, just to kick it off here, as someone who is certainly well familiar with Justin's game. When you think about what you saw from him during his season out there at Cal, what's your overall top impression of what kind of player he is?
Well, I think he's a pretty good player. And he's not a great shooter per se, but he's a connector on the team. He gets other guys involved very well. He is a scorer, just not a consistent deep shooter. He's also a very good defensive player. He's got length. He's got size. One of the games that stood out for him was they played at Stanford. Stanford has the freshman Ibuka Okori, who just declared for the draft and averaged 23 points a game this year. And, Pippen volunteered to defend him, asked to have him as the assignment. And Okori shot 1 for 16 and 0 for 9 on threes in the game, and Cal won the game. Now, he doesn't shut everybody down like that, but he played really well in that game. And, he's been a clutch guy. It seems like he plays better as the game goes along sometimes, or maybe he scores more as the game goes along. Early on, it feels like he's trying to get guys involved. He averaged 14 points, 4 rebounds, and 4.5 assists, about 2 steals a game. So he impacts him in a lot of ways. He's played well in some big games for them. He had 19 points and 5 assists, I think, when they knocked off Carolina. So, he's got a lot of instincts that his dad had. He was born, I think, a year and a half after Scotty retired from the NBA.
Okay.
But you can tell that he's watched Scotty's game. He told me one time that they spent a lot of time playing in the backyard with his big brother, who's now in the NBA. And Scotty was tough on him. He says he made me cry sometimes. He was so hard on us. But it made him a better player. And he has some of those same kind of attributes that you saw from Scottie Pippen as a floor leader, a connector, a guy who would push the pace, and a guy who really bought in defensively.
There was a game of his, and I know, like, in the course of a long season, not all of these pop out, and so maybe this one just kind of blends into the background of the season. But like when I was looking at his stats, there was a game that jumped out to me late in the season when they won at Georgia Tech, and he went scoreless in that game. He was 0 of 7, but he had 8 assists and 3 steals in that game. And I wondered if that is the kind of indicator of, yes, certainly we have seen when you look at his numbers that he can be a high level scorer. And you talked a little bit about his need to be a more efficient player at times, but like a guy, I feel like we see it all the time where you might go scoreless or miss a bunch of shots and you're not going to finish with 8 assists. Does that game speak at all to maybe his ability to impact winning when it doesn't come to just pure scoring?
Oh, I think absolutely. And that's a really good trait in a player, because a lot of guys go into a shell if they're not shooting the ball well, or they just, it affects their game elsewhere on the floor. And we didn't see that from Justin. And he didn't always have big numbers, but he was pretty much a guy who got him 12 to 16, 18 points a game. And occasionally he would have a game like that. But then, to continue to play defense, continue to share the ball. I remember talking on an ACC coaches teleconference with Damon Stoudemire, who was the Georgia Tech coach. And he talked about when he was in college and how he was the point guard at Arizona. And that guy named Khalid Reeves, who went on to play in the NBA. And he says, it was my job to set up Khalid and to get him shots and to make it work for him. And it benefited both of them. And I think that's really kind of the arrangement that we saw from Justin and from Day-Day Ames, who also is transferred, is heading to Tennessee. Yeah. And Ames was a leading scorer on their team, averaged like 17.5 points. But they played really well together. And I think Ames owes some of his success to what Justin was able to do to help him. Justin was a guy who I don't think was terribly concerned with scoring a lot of points. But he also understood when it was time for him to call his own number, and he went to the basket well, got himself free throws. I'd say the biggest shortcoming in his offensive game is he's just not a real consistent 3-point shooter. Yeah. In some games he would hit 3 or 4, in other games he wouldn't hit any. And but really that was about the biggest complaint you would have about his game.
Is that something when you would watch him shoot, like Ohio State had this year as a freshman, Amari Bynum came in and I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head right now, but he came in build. He's a power forward, but like that he could stretch the floor, he could shoot from the perimeter, and he was probably about 25% or so for like the first maybe 2/3 of the season, and then but you could see that like there was potential in that jump shot, and it started to come together at the end of the season. He was, I think, 35-40% the last however many games. But do you see with Justin, like, is that the kind of thing that I guess there's certainly room for improvement, but do you see the potential, I guess, for that to get better with him?
No, I think so. I mean, I covered Jason Kidd at Cal, and he couldn't shoot a lick. He was a tremendous player in college, but he couldn't shoot the perimeter shot. And he ended up in the NBA by his 4th or 5th or 6th year. He was a capable three-pointer. And I think when you look at Justin, there's nothing wrong with his shot. He's got a nice, sound-looking shot. It's just he's not consistent yet. I think he shot like 33%. It'll get better, I'm sure, but he's also not going to be a high volume 3-point shooter, even in today's game. I think he averaged 6.5 attempts a game from 3. And he made a couple of them, but that's not a huge flaw. It's just something that hasn't developed yet.
Yeah. So you mentioned, obviously the bloodlines and, we all are very familiar with certainly other people in his family. How much was Scotty Sr. Around the program? Was he consistently at games? Would you see him a lot on the sidelines? Like how much I'm interested to see how much Scottie Pippen we see this year in Columbus.
Well, it's a little farther trip for him. He lives in LA.
Yeah.
And so he was busy with his business or whatever work he had going on during the week, but we would see him very consistently at home games on the weekend. I'd say he probably attended at least 6 or 8 games in Berkeley. So he was a presence there. And Justin would talk about how he and his dad would talk after every game. And his dad was his biggest critic, but was with constructive criticism and saying, here's what I saw and here's what you can do better. And I think Justin appreciated that. I mean, he's getting attention from him, and he's getting, help that's going to progress his game.
When he got to Cal after his 1 year at Michigan, where he was mostly a reserve, I guess exclusively a reserve, what sort of things were like Mark Madsen was he talking about, and like what sort of things really intrigued them about adding Pippen in the portal last year?
Well, they made him their starting point guard from day one. They were convinced that he was the right guy for that. And Justin, from his point of view, talked about how the experience at Michigan was terrible. He just didn't have an opportunity, and it made him question whether he was as good as he thought he was. And it created some self-doubt. He got to Cal, and Madsen just fueled him with confidence and said, "You're my guy." And I think they saw him as a guy who could really kind of lead the deal, and he did. I suspect, I think players transfer these days for a lot of reasons, and the biggest one is always money. I'm not sure that was the biggest one in Justin's case because, the family's not in need of money, obviously.
Sure.
But I do think that probably had Cal made the NCAA tournament, maybe it would have been different. They got close. They played well until the last 2 weeks, and then they lost a couple of games they couldn't afford to lose, and that left him in the NIT. And meanwhile, he's watching everybody else, in March Madness, and I'm sure he felt like, okay, I want to go someplace where I can be a little bit more assured of playing in the NCAAs. I know that he has NBA aspirations, and I think it's an entirely reasonable thing for him to feel. I don't think he's there yet, but along the way, I'm sure he wants to play in the NCAA tournament because everybody does. So
sure.
I think that's probably as big a reason as any that he left. I think he was happy with his Cal experience. Mark Madsen gave him a lot of confidence, gave him a lot of trust after a year where he felt like he was just kind of lost. So he'll arrive at Ohio State in a much different place than he was when he got here.
Okay. Well, last question for you, and you touched on this a little bit, but like looking at kind of how he'll now fit into Ohio State's lineup, and I'm assuming kind of like I wasn't intimately familiar with how Cal's lineups went and what the season was like out there. I'm guessing you probably don't know the starting 5 for Ohio State, or maybe you do, and maybe I'm short selling you a little bit. But
I do not. No.
Okay, so he's going to slot into a lineup with a couple of guys like John Mobley Jr. is going to be testing the NBA waters. He'll be back next season as a junior, but he's a shooter. Amari Bynum, freshman last year, really came on late, and they're bringing in a McDonald's All-American forward, Anthony Thompson. So they've got kind of some guys that clearly seem to be like the head of the snake, like the new big three type of deal on this roster. So when I look at like Pippen fitting with them, I feel like his defensive capabilities, his ability to, like you said, like distribute the ball and get other guys going, it seems to fit with a talented core of players. When he's on a team in a situation like this, where I think right now we all kind of project like those three guys to maybe get the most shots, how well do you see him like being able to assimilate into a new program and a situation like that where he's probably not going to be the guy getting the most shots on a given night?
Yeah, I think that's an ideal arrangement for him. You know, even on the Cal team this year, they had 4 guys averaging double figures. I think he was the second or third leading scorer on the team. He wasn't terribly concerned about how many shots he could get. I mean, he had the ball in his hands a lot, so theoretically he could have taken as many as he wanted. But that wasn't the way he functioned. So it sounds to me like a pretty good arrangement for him. I think he'll be fine. He'll score some points, but he doesn't have to be the lead scorer. And I think he understands the value and the kind of things he can provide the team. You know, his father was rarely the leading scorer on that NBA team he played for. I think they had a pretty good guy with him. I can't remember his name, but Scotty certainly understood his role with Michael Jordan. And I think that Justin will be comfortable playing on a team where his goal really is to win. And he wants to go to the NCAA tournament, I'm sure. And if he's got guys around him who are going to help him do that, then he's going to feed them the ball, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, it's been awesome getting to catch up with you, and I really genuinely appreciate you sharing some perspective. Like I said, over here in Ohio, we're still kind of catching up a little bit and getting to know a little bit about him, and so being able to catch up with someone who's got your expertise and shed a little light on one of the players we'll all be watching this year is genuinely appreciated. So, Jeff, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, I think you'll like him. He's a smart kid. He's got some personality. It seems like he should fit in fine, and was happy to join you today, Adam.
All right. So thanks again to Jeff for coming on. Honestly, I felt like I learned a lot, and I've got a lot of time here in the next couple of months to watch film and get some eyeballs on some clips and have a better understanding. But I just thought it'd be good for all of us to hear from somebody who had seen him play and was familiar with his game and had some insights. So hopefully you found that interesting and illuminating, because I felt like I learned a lot. So going to do one of these early next week as well on Yelovich, and we'll get to know Jelly a little bit better and start to get a better feel for how he fits into things and what his role looks like at Ohio State next year. So we're going to have quite a few guests coming up here. I have spoken, or at least traded messages with both winners of the Beat the Beat Writer Bracket Challenge, and both are excited to be on the podcast. So we'll have those episodes coming up. Might be recording them as soon as next week. So we will get those out to you as well. But really excited for that. Really excited for the next one of these two, breaking down Jelly. And then we'll see what else happens here in these next couple of days. So, stay tuned. Probably worth pointing out that sometimes not having something to report is in itself reporting. And maybe that's something we all need to keep in mind as we move through the transfer portal season and era and all those things. So I'm going to wrap this one up now. As always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardy@dispatch.com. Thank you again for listening. Thanks to either Bryce or Scott for getting this out to all of us, or all of you to listen to. I'll be back with you soon, probably very early next week. So until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon. Want a huge deal on a large pizza? For a very limited time at Donato's, buy any large pizza and add a large one-topping pizza for 50% off. Yes, half off. Use promo code HALF. Donato's, gotta love more.